All right. It's time to rock and roll, Adam. How you feeling?
Feeling good, man. I told Josh found a glass that I can fit 2 beers in, so I'm good to go.
There you go. Last slate before Thanksgiving. Welcome to the deeper dive. Here we go. We'll wait for this room to populate a bit, but the truth is we don't have a ton of time given that we have 13 games to discuss on a Wednesday. Thanksgiving rapidly approaching, yes, tomorrow, and one big ass slate to handle before we get into the holiday. Friday, 14 games as well. So, welcome to everybody. Glad to have you with us. Um, we should get this out there, Adam, because we got off to this early start, and then you know what happens. You already did retweet it. Look at you.
Yeah, man. I'm ahead of the game today.
You are ahead of the game. You know what though? 13 games, and here are the names of guys that are just priced above 10K, just on DraftKings, right? If they're above 10K on DraftKings, it's going to be above 10K on FanDuel. Kevin Durant in price from for a list of cheapest to most expensive. Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook, Joel Embiid, James Harden, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Anthony Davis, and LeBron James. Of those players, there are at least 4 of them that I really, really like today, and that makes things difficult.
Only 4? Who don't you like?
I said at least 4, meaning
Okay.
if I have to make look, I'm not playing all of them. So if I have to make exceptions, if I were to have to make a final cut, Joel Embiid's going to be in it, in not being cut. He's going to be in that pool. LeBron James, definitely Anthony Davis, definitely Kevin Durant. So, Giannis and Harden and Westbrook, as much as I think they're very capable of putting up monster numbers on a nightly basis, they are not as high on my list as the previous 4. I have to take a stand somewhere.
Yeah, no, I agree. The only one out of that group that I don't have any interest in would be Harden.
Yeah, Harden is the one as well. But how much interest do you have in Giannis and Westbrook?
A lot.
A
I mean,
lot.
I have Giannis projected as the highest scorer on the slate, which I don't think is surprising.
No, I mean you've had him projected as the highest scorer on the slate for months now, and
Right.
he's just. We talked about it on today's early bird. It's not that he isn't getting volume. It's not that he isn't getting rebounds. It's that he isn't doing everything in the same game. And I know that sounds simplistic, but it's true. Just look at it. Like, you're not getting the 30 point, 15 rebound, 7 assists, 3 block, 2 steal games recently. You're getting a little bit of everything, but not enough to put him over the top. That's what we've seen from Giannis recently.
Right, exactly, and that's why I still I'm trying to pull him back as much as I can because otherwise I just end up getting nothing but Giannis every single slate. But at the same time, he's still doing all this stuff, and just the fact that he's not doing it he hasn't done it in one game in a while doesn't mean that the potential isn't there.
All right. Yeah. Who are your top? Then we're just going to jump into it. Who are your top high priced players on this slate above 10K? I gave you mine. Davis, Embiid, LeBron, and Durant. No particular order. I love all 4 of them at the top.
Yeah, Durant, Giannis, and Embiid are the 3 that I'm most interested in.
Okay. LeBron James, I'm having trouble ignoring, man. I'm not a narrative guy, but shit, that's a tough one to overlook. I'm almost hoping I just don't play him and they blow him out in 3 quarters and we don't have to
Yeah,
worry about it.
I mean, for me, it's just that LeBron's the most expensive one out of that group, where I think
Yep.
it's splitting hairs anyway, and I assume that he's going to be one of the most popular, if not the most popular, simply because of who he's playing. So, yeah, I mean, there's nothing that I dislike about LeBron, but he's the most expensive one.
Fair enough. By the way, what we're going to do on today's show, since there are so many games, we want to be able to get you guys as much, relevant content as possible. We are going, obviously, to cover all 13 games, but we're going to spend the most time on the most relevant plays and not really dive deep into games that we're just not as high on. You can read the deep dive on awesemo.com. I've put in a lot of work to that today, 4+ hours getting that out with all these games. You have the ownership, the projections, and everything else. So you have that. If you have not, if you think we missed something, but we're going to do our best not to. So here we go. Charlotte, Indiana, in Charlotte. Pacers are 4-point dogs here on the road, Adam. And it's funny because Oladipo sat last game and they blew out Utah by 27 points. The Jazz have really struggled lately, but you've got Noah Oladipo here. Kemba Walker is playing at a torrid pace right now, coming off a 60 real point game against Philly. He drops 43 and 59 against Boston in that last game out. I want to start with Charlotte, though, because as of now, I don't have anybody in Charlotte that I'm playing today. And it's not like, oh, Kemba's a good play or he's a good play. I'm really only focusing on guys that are going to be in my player pool because there's so many options on the table. What about you here?
Right. There's 13 games, and I'm not prioritizing anyone from this game because you have Kemba priced all the way up. Jeremy Lamb, I think the price is fine, but there's like 6 guys at his price point that I prefer. So I'm with you. There's just nobody here that I'm prioritizing.
Happy Thanksgiving to you, Bathrobe Basement Music Time. Glad to have you guys here, all of you, as we cover a ton of games. I'm with you on Charlotte. On the other side, I'm not going to lie though, Adam. I do still have interest in Tyreek Evans. That game blew out. He didn't return. He played 27 minutes. He shot 3 for 12. He shot 7 for 24 over the last 2 games without Oladipo. I still know that Evans has the 40 fantasy point upside. He showed it just 3 games back. We know what he's like when he's got 29, 30% usage. He's done it so many times in the past. I understand his prices come up, but my guess is everyone's a bit sour on him, and I still have interest. What are you doing with the Pacers today with no Oladipo?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it just becomes a really appealing spot with Oladipo out, and I'm right there with you on Evans. I don't think he's overpriced. His price tag obviously jumped, but he was incredibly
Agreed.
underpriced for the matchup with if you're playing without Oladipo. So, still at 5,400 on DraftKings, I think that you get 30, 32 minutes out of Evans, assuming that this game stays competitive. He's going to be very involved as a scorer. He's going to be involved as a facilitator as well. And the fact that this slate is so big and that he was disappointing last time out should keep his ownership in check. So yeah, I have no issue with Tyreek Evans.
Neither do I. You would agree though that you're going to see a pretty steep drop in ownership from last slate, where now we have 13 games and now his price point has come up above 5K. Even though it's fair, people see that and they back off of it.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm not expecting him to be, 1% owned or anything, but I'm certainly not expecting him to be popular enough on a slate with this many options for me to want to, just fade him for ownership reasons.
Yeah, I'm surprised to see on our ownership projections on awesomeo.com. Uh, he's up there. He's up there. I think he comes in lower than that. Not to mention, with this many games, ownership is hardly a thing I'm worried about today. Honestly, you won't hear me talk about it much, Adam. I think there's just I don't think it's going to be a massive factor, and I think you could get yourself into trouble by focusing heavily on ownership when things are going to be spread out beyond belief anyway. What about you?
Yeah, that's kind of how I approach huge slates too. Like really chalk goes from, 40% to 20%
Hmm.
on slates like this. And, outside of spots where you can find a 1% owned guy that you have projected the same as a 20% owned guy, obviously that's a spot that you want to capitalize on, but I just don't put as much weight into it as I do on smaller slates where there's bigger disparities.
By the way, did you realize Dame Lillard was only 20% owned last night on a 4 gamer?
Yes, because I swapped off of him and then I looked to see how owned he was.
Okay. Yeah, you had a tough swap night coming off Vonleh and Lillard.
Yeah, I
Uh,
mean, the Lillard part wasn't bad. I went to McCollum and he scored almost as many points, but
oh, okay. I thought you swapped off to Kawhi because
nah,
yeah, that wasn't pretty. Where are
nah.
you at on the bonus? 26 minutes last game. Again, there was some blowout there, a big blowout. 47 fantasy points. This dude's been a monster this season. Per minute production along the likes of Yusuf Nurkic. His price is getting up there, but he still has been very good. You expect heavier owner or usage simply due to no Oladipo, but he's another one of those guys in that mid 6K range that makes for a relatively tough fit. 7-1 on FanDuel, a tough fit with so many games and so many other players in this price range. Anybody other than Evans that you like in this on the Pacer side of the ball?
Yeah, so I mean, I like Sabonis. The issue is just that it is a tough fit on this slate. If you can get him in, then by all means go for it. He really just turns into a triple double threat whenever he plays without Oladipo. 20+% usage, rebounding, and assist percentages without Oladipo on the floor this season. McMillan had said last game that he wanted to play him alongside Turner more as well. We didn't get to see how they would have actually closed that game, so maybe they would have gone big with Sabonis and Turner, but it's tough to get him in the lineups, but I don't have a problem with him. Miles Turner, though, at 5,300, I think makes for a really good play because he's expected to play. I think you get 28 to 30 minutes out of him, but without Oladipo on the floor this season, you're looking at a 25% usage rate, 15% rebounding percentage, 13% assist percentage. I haven't projected for between 33 and 35 DraftKings points, depending on if I go to 28 or 30 minutes. And I think that at 5,300, that ends up being a really nice play.
Yeah, I don't hate that. I'll also point out that Corey Joseph, he came out with 3 minutes left in the game. He would have played around 28. Corey Joseph is not exactly a high per minute producer, but you're getting like 20, 25 from him each night in a situation like this, confidently. So if you are playing cash and you're looking for a cheap guard, he's not the worst play. 3,900. You're probably going to get 30 minutes if this game stays close. So he's still cheap. He's out there if you need him. He's one of those guys. All right, Adam, Philly, New Orleans. Let's talk about the highest projected scoring game on the slate. Philly, 4-point favorites at home. 236.5 total here. 236.5. That's right. The only game actually above 225. The only game above 225 on a 13-game slate. We're starting to see totals come down a little bit. Pace is starting to slow a little bit as the season goes on, but not here. The Sixers and Pelicans playing at 7th and 3rd fastest pace in the league, respectively. I say it every day. Joel Embiid belongs in the same conversation as Davis, Antetokounmpo, LeBron, and he continues to prove it. In 4 games, Adam, in 4 games since Butler has come to Philly, you say, oh, well, that hurts Embiid, right? Wrong. He's playing, first of all, he's playing 35 plus minutes per game, but check this out. Not only is he top 5 in every relevant category, but since Butler came, Embiid is averaging 27 points, 12 rebounds, 4 assists, 3.5 stocks, and 56.1 DraftKings points. Now, that's okay, right? But keep this in mind. He's shooting 39% from the field over that span. He's a 48% career shooter. So he actually figures to see an uptick in scoring going forward. And he has a 35.5% usage rate since Butler came to the team. 35.5. Butler's done nothing to slow him down at all.
Yeah, and he still also has close to a 20% rebounding percentage and assist percentage. So still contributing across the board. It's not even like Butler being there is taking the ball out of his hands in other departments. So, yeah, absolutely love the spot for Embiid. The only issue, and it's the thing we talk about every single slate, is that there's a ton of upside at center for lower price tags, and he's only eligible at this one position, whereas on DraftKings you have most of the stars eligible at 2 positions, so it gets a little bit tougher to get there. But there's nothing that I dislike for him here. I haven't projected over 60 fantasy points on DraftKings, and I love the spot for Embiid. Out of the high priced guys on Philadelphia, I mean, out of him, Simmons, and Butler, even factoring in their prices, I have Embiid as the best play by a pretty wide margin.
Yep, so do I. And again, like I said, I'm no longer hesitant to pull the trigger on him over some of these other top tier players because he's giving me the same numbers, if not better, on a nightly basis. Remember I talked about Simmons, and I took a premature L there on Simmons when Butler came. And then I want you to just cover the rest of this game, but I want to get this out there. In the first 2 games Butler played, Simmons was lost. You would agree, right? Just looked lost.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, he's played 69 of his 71 minutes that he's played over the last 2 games. 69 of those minutes, all but 2, have come with Butler on the court. He has a 24% usage rate, 41% assist rate, and 17% total rebounding rate. 1.37 fantasy points per minute. And Embiid's been on the court for 50 of those minutes. So that's encouraging to me. It's also encouraging that he's attempted 13 shots in both of those games. He's shooting 62%. He's getting more openings in the lane on drives. He's finally starting to exploit all of the strengths that Butler gives this team when he's on the court. So I know it's very tough to play Simmons today, and I'm not saying you have to, but I would at least keep in mind that I still, you know what, I'm going to retract my L. I think it was a little early, and say that I think Simmons will still benefit. He's come an assist shy of a triple double in both of those games, but his price is still up there a bit, Adam. So it's tough to get in there on it.
Right. I like the spot for him. I don't even mind the price tag in a vacuum. I think that
On DraftKings.
Right. Yeah. On DraftKings.
Right? Okay.
Yeah. I always like him more on DraftKings just because of the bonuses for double doubles and triple doubles. Plus, he's cheaper. But I think the price tag's fine until you start comparing it to some of the other guys on this slate that we'll talk about. And that's where, unless I'm max entering, I'm having trouble prioritizing Ben Simmons. Kind of the same goes for Butler. I think the price tag's cheap, but it's worth pointing out that he's playing, 32, 33 minutes with Philadelphia compared to the 36 or 37 he was playing with Minnesota, excluding games that have gone to overtime. So I think that's something that's important to make sure that you factor in when you're projecting him here, as well as, the fact he has a 20.5% usage rate since coming over. Outside of one game, we really haven't seen him be aggressive offensively at all. And I think it's something that'll fluctuate from game to game, but I just don't think that he needs to take on as big a role with this team as he did with Minnesota. So while 7,100 on DraftKings is a nice price tag and it seems really cheap for Butler, I just don't think it's quite as cheap as it seems at first glance.
Talk to me about the rest of this game. A whole lot of players. Anthony Davis facing a Sixers team that has really struggled to slow down teams' go-to scorers. We've seen it a million times this year, right? Whether it's Mitchell or Walker 3 times or Booker or Vooch triple doubling and then putting up a 30-10 game. The list goes on. Teams go-to scorers, for some reason, Philly's funneling all of the volume through those guys and taking away that type of spread out offense. It's just an observation, but it's stood true. It's rung true thus far. Love to get your take on this Pelican side of the ball in, again, a really high scoring matchup.
Yeah, I mean, just to throw out from the Philly side, I think Redick and Chandler are both good value plays in a really good spot. But going over to the New Orleans side, I love Drew Holiday here. Should play around 38 minutes tonight. Elfrid Payton's still out. The game we assume will stay competitive, and Holiday just sees such a bump when Payton's not on the floor. Even going back to last season, alongside Anthony Davis and Nikola Mirotic, since he came over, you have a 26% usage rate and 41% assist percentage for Holiday, averaging well over a fantasy point per minute. Should play around 38 minutes here. One of my favorite plays on the entire slate, especially on DraftKings at 8,100. Davis, obviously it's a good spot for him. I think that I prefer Holiday at 8,100 to Davis at 11,400, or an even more expensive price tag on FanDuel. But both are obviously really good plays.
Yeah, they certainly are. And we talked a lot about how Mirotic was siphoning away some usage from Davis early on. Well, anyone considering Davis today would be happy to know that his usage over his last 8 games, Davis, not Mirotic, is 31%, 1.55 fantasy points per minute. Mirotic has seen his usage tumble from 25% over his first 9 games to 18.8% over his last 6. Big drop in usage there for Mirotic, Adam, and it's directly tied to Anthony Davis being more aggressive with the ball in his hands.
Yeah, it was good to see him finally start, Mirotic that is, finally start to go back to the role that we saw when he came over last year, because it was just it was confusing how often he was shooting at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, it was frustrating. Obviously, this is one of those games where we don't want to miss out on any of the analysis, because there are so many capable big plays here, from Embiid to, I will include Simmons, to obviously Davis, top play, to Drew Holiday, to Redick, as you mentioned, and maybe even Wilson Chandler as a value. Anybody else in this one that you're considering before we move on?
No, it's mostly the cheap guys from Philadelphia plus Holiday and Embiid are the guys that I'm looking to, or that I'm most interested in.
Okay, I will agree with that, and I will also throw in Mr. Simmons in there as a tournament play. Hey, by the way, click that thumbs up button for us. Hit the subscribe and notification bell so you know when every show is starting. You can also, on Twitter, we always retweet it as well at Laffy_D. Ship my money DFS. We always make sure to get those links out there. And by the way, with Thanksgiving and Black Friday approaching, I just want to let you guys know that right now at awesemo.com, starting on Friday, all of your favorite shows will have promo codes that give you 50% off your first month. 50% off all access membership, all access monthly membership, 50% off starting on Friday, or 12 months for the price of 10 on an annual all access membership, saving of $120. So a membership here gets you pretty much everything: rankings, ownership, exclusive tools, content, projections, you name it. We've got it all on awesemo.com. So starting on Friday, 50% off your first month on an all access monthly membership, or 12 months for the price of 10 on an all access membership. We hope to see you over there. All right, Adam, let's keep it moving here. We've got a lot to talk about. Boston, New York Knicks. How about that starting lineup yesterday? We had some Vonleh in there. We had some Hazonia. We had some Cantor in the starting lineup. I get this, by the way. I told you I min cashed the 180 and everything down. Played one lineup by I think like a half a point because I had all the high scoring guys, but I also had Hazonia in there, and my dumbass played Dwayne Wade as well, thinking I was going to get cute there, and both of them finished with like a combined 10 fantasy points. So, assuming we get the same lineup tonight from New York.
Yeah. Obviously less of what's that?
They said it's tough. We don't know.
Right. Yeah. No idea. If we do, then Vonleh still is kind of interesting. Like he's 4,100. I don't expect him to have anywhere close to the game that he had last night because playing alongside Cantor really should hurt him in the rebounding department. We didn't see it against Portland, but Cantor is a good rebounder. He's going to be closer to the basket. We shouldn't see a ton of double-digit rebounding games from Vonleh, and that's been the case this season when he's played alongside Cantor. So I'm not super optimistic about him. Even if he does start, I do like Cantor quite a bit. He's still inexpensive. If we get 30 to 32 minutes from him, he should be able to produce even in this matchup. So I like Cantor. And then the one guy that I think still really benefits here is Trey Burke coming off the bench. He continues to be the first guard out there, only playing 22 to 24 minutes. But with Cantor, Hazonia, and Hardaway all in the starting lineup, you're getting just so much second unit usage for Trey Burke at only 4,200 that I think he's appealing.
Okay. I think Vonleh's fine. I really don't have an issue with him if he stays out of foul trouble. I don't have an issue at all. But I will point out, though, if you look at power forward on DraftKings and on FanDuel, you have a few guys that are very cheap in that 4K range. You might say, oh, that's gross. I don't want to play them. But just a handful of guys out there that could give you, upwards of 30 fantasy points. Now, these are just cheap guys, but Vonleh would be one of them. Jerebko's hauling in double-digit rebounds each time he starts for Green. Saric Saric has closed out each of the last two games over Gibson. I wouldn't be surprised if he played 30 minutes. And then Derek Favors on DraftKings is 4,500. So it's not like Vonleh is a must. There are a lot of cheap power forwards out there today too, Adam.
Dwayne Dedmon as well in that price range.
Yep. Yeah, I was going to mention him at center, but I forgot. You're right. He does have power forward eligibility. So good call. And is there anything you like in this game though? Like you're gravitating towards? I think you could make an argument for Tatum and a few guys, but it's tough to fall in love with anyone in this game.
No, I mean, if I'm playing 150 lineups, I would have interest in Tatum, Irving, and Hayward from the Boston side, but none of the three are guys that I'm looking to prioritize in single entry or three max. From the New York side, I think that Cantor and Burke are the two I'm most interested in, but haven't really gotten to them in my lineup yet, at least as of now.
All right. You think that's it for this game? You cool with moving on?
Yep.
All right, let's do it. And yeah, again, just with Vonleh, the guy's per minute production hasn't been bad whatsoever. He's still 1.09 fantasy points per minute this year. I'm sorry, right around the fantasy point per minute this year.
Not alongside Cantor though. Like he takes a big hit when Cantor's out there.
Except for yesterday.
Yeah, except for yesterday.
Yeah. Okay. Atlanta and Toronto. This is a fun one. We'll spend a little time here. Toronto by 7.5 on the road, 225.5 total. This is a friendly pace up matchup for sure. If you're looking at Toronto now, they already play at a top 11 pace, but it's funny because the Hawks are so far ahead of almost everyone that even though Toronto's playing faster this year, the Hawks are still averaging 5 additional possessions per 48, which is quite a bit when you factor everything in. I expect a lot of points here. We have a lot of moving parts on both sides. You want to start with Toronto, which seems to be more relevant?
Yeah, so still waiting on news there with OG Anunoby and CJ Miles. Right now, I'm projecting Miles in and OG to be out. If that's the case, then I think that Fred VanVleet comes in as a nice value play again. I would expect him to draw the start just like he did last time OG was out. And he's still relevant even when he plays alongside Kyle Lowry going back to last season, has about a 20% usage rate in those minutes, a 21.5% assist percentage, averages close to a fantasy point per minute. And we've seen Lowry is willing to let Van Vliet for pretty significant stretches of time run the offense when they're on the court together. So that makes him someone that sometimes when guys come off the bench and join the starting lineup, like Kelly Oubre last night, you just give them a huge downgrade because they don't get the ball as much in that lineup. But that's not the case for Van Vliet. So if he does get the start here, I like him as a really strong value play. If OG is in, I think it's actually a boost for Kyle Lowry because you would have Van Vliet going back to the bench. You would have another, basically zero usage guy on the floor, and you see Lowry's usage rate climb from about 23.5 up to about 27%. So OG being in or out, I think makes a huge difference on this team.
It does. The problem is I don't really know what to make of this. Nick Nurse was like, "Oh yeah, we're optimistic that OG and Miles will play," and I think you said that he said the same thing about Monday's game too. So we really don't know right now,
Right.
which makes it
Yeah.
tough.
Yeah, I have no idea. Like we know that Miles and OG went through practice on Monday. OG apparently had a wrap on his shooting wrist, so I don't know.
So the thing is, OG, I don't know. Let's say him and Miles they remain out because they got Thursday off. Obviously, let's say they remain out. Norman Powell is still out. He's going to be out for some weeks. That means that DeLon Wright probably sees a lot of minutes here with Kawhi out too.
You would think, but he really didn't last time out.
With all three of them out or two
Yeah.
of them out?
Yeah, against Chicago, or earlier this week.
Oh, that's right. 19 minutes. You're right.
Right.
You're right.
And yeah, so
Well, actually, wait. How much of that had to do with the fact that that game was blown out by the second quarter? I'd be interested to know.
his rotation was basically, it was almost identical first half to second half.
Is that right?
Yeah, Van Vliet lost minutes in that one, and he still played 28 or 29.
Okay, so then Van Vliet would potentially be the guy that we're looking at here.
Yeah, Van Vliet would be the one that I expect to get huge minutes if that's the case.
You're right. DeLon Wright played 4 minutes in the first quarter, and then 7 in the second. Well, actually, he played a little. Just 8 minutes in the second, and then in the third, he played 2.5 and 5.5. So he lost about 4 or 5 minutes in the second half, but still not enough to suggest that it was the blowout that killed him. Although the bench did close out the entire game for the entire fourth quarter. We're talking Chris Boucher, and is it Boucher or Boucher? It looks like
Boucher.
Looks Boucher. Jordan Lloyd, Greg Monroe, Lorenzo Brown, and Malachi Richardson was the closing lineup.
Yeah.
That's a beauty.
Yeah, so I mean, Van Vliet's the one that I'm going to prioritize there. Right, getting exposure to Wright across a bunch of lineups certainly makes sense at a cheap price tag on DraftKings at 3,600, and because you can drop him on FanDuel. But Van Vliet would be the one that I'm most interested in.
Yeah, fair enough. By the way, I still think that that Wright. I'm putting him. I would personally put him for more than 19 minutes if these three are out. I'd probably throw him around 24 or so. I think Pascal Siakam is also still firmly in play on DraftKings. Like I know that his price is getting up there, but with Kawhi out, he's just been good to begin with. First of all, and he's been very consistent. You're talking about a guy 30 plus fantasy points in 10 of his last 12. I'll take that all day long. With Kawhi off the court, 217 minutes, he's got 21% usage, 14.3% rebounding, 1.08 fantasy points per minute. It is a back-to-back, but he's a young fella. 33, 35 minutes against the Hawks team that's been just bludgeoned by opposing bigs, opposing power forwards. Most points, fourth most rebounds, most steals, third most blocks, third most assists, like every category based, and the pace has a lot to do with this. The Hawks have been trashed. I still like Siakam here.
Yeah, so do I. And I mean, if OG's out, that's his primary backup that's out as well. So you should again see, around 36 minutes here from Siakam in a great matchup.
No doubt about it. Okay. What about Atlanta? We have a couple injuries. Spellman's out and Alex Poitras is out. That's exciting.
Yeah, I mean, it's still very difficult, I think, to predict what this team is going to do rotation-wise. They played 12 guys in their most recent game, and that was with Poitras out of that one as well. So now you have Spellman out. You have Dwayne Dedmon getting the start, and he played, I think it was 24 minutes last game. He's been in the mid-20s lately. So I have him projected for about 26 minutes here, and I think that he just comes in as a good value play. 4,200 with forward eligibility, which is really useful on this slate on DraftKings. John Collins getting the start as well. I haven't seen what to expect minutes wise from him, but he had been limited to around 20, so I have him up to about 26 here. But with only center eligibility, at least on DraftKings, it's much more difficult for me to get to him than it is to Dedmon. So Dedmon ends up being my favorite guy from Atlanta. If you wanted to go to Trae Young in tournaments, he certainly has upside as he showed last game. You just have to keep in mind the volatility of this Hawks rotation and the fact that he could very easily play 24 to 26 minutes here. He could very easily play 34. We really have no idea what to expect out of him.
And to be clear, we don't have any update on projected minutes or limitations, restrictions when it comes to John Collins.
Okay.
Just in case anyone was wondering, there isn't anything there. I definitely think though that the fact that he's starting at 4,800, the guy is a quality basketball player. Like coming into the league, I was a big fan of Collins. He definitely has some things to work on. There's no question. But he's going to be a successful NBA player for sure. Last year, he averaged 37 fantasy points per 36, so north of a fantasy point per minute. And this season, it looks like he's getting healthy. If he plays 25 minutes, it's not a great matchup, but if he plays 25 minutes at 4,800, Collins could easily pay off that price tag like no problem, Adam.
Yeah, my issue is the position. If he was a power forward, I would love John Collins here. But at center, assuming that he's not, fully like
Yep.
unleashed and able to go play 32 minutes, I think the opportunity cost is so high. When you talk about he's only $500 less expensive than Miles Turner, he's $700 less expensive than Carter. There's just so many center options on this slate that even though I have him projected as a better play than Dwayne Dedmon, the fact that Dedmon has power forward eligibility makes him an easier guy to roster.
It's an absolutely brutal restriction from a positional standpoint. Like not having him at power forward, it's
Right.
brutal. And you're right; it takes a whole lot of shine off of him. If he was power forward, man, he'd be my favorite value play. But at center, it makes it tough. Sure, you can flex him into the utility spot, but having that flexibility, excuse me, that flexibility with power forward, as we saw all of last season, would make life a whole lot easier. Okay, let's keep it going. Phoenix and Chicago. Two bad teams. This should be fun. The Suns are 1-point favorites on the road. Imagine that. 217 total here. Two dog shit teams to put it bluntly. And look, the truth is the Suns aren't good, but I still love a lot of these guys. I mean, I think they're worse. I think they're a better team than their record shows. That's not saying a lot, but I'm a big fan of Devin Booker. At $7,900 on FanDuel, I absolutely love him. It sucks that Cannon is being slotted back into the starting lineup, but Booker still has a assist rate, 36%. It's 11% higher than any other time in his career. Like he's crushing that this season. He's still got 30% usage, and he's basically he's the motor of this entire Phoenix offense. And while Cannon might take away a few assist opportunities, 7,900 is just way too cheap in my opinion. And then you have TJ Warren, who's literally playing 39, 40 minutes a game since he was inserted into the starting lineup back on the 8th of November.
Yes, for Booker, I love him on FanDuel at 7,900. I think the price tag is just completely wrong there. And Cannon being back really just doesn't change that for me.
No.
On DraftKings, where his price tag shot up to 8,700, I was kind of finding myself having to force him into my lineup, even if I projected him to start at point guard. So Cannon being back took enough away from him where I'm just not really getting to him, at least in single entry or 3-max stuff.
And then you can just play the shooting guard on the other side of this game for 7,900.
Yeah, exactly. Levine's $800 less expensive. So yeah, it's the upsides there, but the upsides there for a ton of guys on this slate, and I'm just having trouble getting there. I think that 6,900 is a fair price on Ayton. There's plenty of upside there. TJ Warren still has some upside, but neither one are guys that I'm prioritizing on this particular slate with all the options out there.
Yeah. Levine is too cheap, or at least very reasonably priced on DraftKings. Would you agree that on FanDuel, it's Booker over Levine? Close price point, but very similar players. Booker is actually a better facilitator. On DraftKings, Levine at 7,900 and Booker at 8,700. You lean Levine there at an $800 discount on a night where you're going to want to free up some cap space.
Yeah, I would just take whichever one is less expensive. I have them projected very, very similarly.
All right. Well, let's talk about the rest of this game because there's a decent amount here. You've got TJ Warren, we don't have to spend much time on him, but it's kind of just volume and opportunity outweigh anything else here, you know?
Right. And I think that looking at least with DraftKings pricing, the price tags on the Bulls are much more appealing than the price tags on Phoenix are. It's not even that I think the guys on Phoenix are too expensive. It's just that their counterparts on the Bulls are all like $700 or $800 less expensive.
Right. Yeah, it's a good point. Wendell Carter's 5,500. The minutes have come down recently. Hoiberg kind of toying with how he uses him. We know he still has upside. He's still well over a fantasy point per minute all year long, but the minutes have come down. Pretty deep center position. Any interest in Carter, or are you leaning towards guys like Miles Turner at a couple $100 discount?
I like Carter a lot at 5,500 on DraftKings. His minutes have been down, but also the last 3 games the Bulls have played have been blowouts. Game before that, he played about 26 minutes and lost almost the entire second quarter to foul trouble. The game before that, he played 25 minutes with no foul trouble. So I'm not super confident that he gets a bunch of minutes, but I don't want to weigh too much or look too much into his recent game logs and the minutes he played there. For tournament purposes, at least, I'm comfortable projecting him around 30 minutes and taking the probably 35 fantasy points I haven't projected for. And I just think that the price tag factors in the minutes risk here, because I think it's a spot where he should be able to pretty easily beat his price tag as long as he can stay on the floor.
Yeah, and you look at his like recent games. You look at Wendell Carter Jr.'s last 3 games, right? And if you look at the game flow, he's played a total of 1 minute and 48 seconds in the fourth quarter. A total, not per game, total. That's what he's seen over the last 3 games in the fourth quarter.
Yeah. Yeah, and they were all blowouts over those last 3.
Correct. Right. So assuming he even got some run in the fourth quarter, that would certainly change things, because if you look at the Dallas game on the 12th, where they lost by 5 points, Wendell Carter played 9 minutes to close out the fourth quarter. Gave him 27 minutes there.
Right. That was the game where he was in foul trouble, and I think it was the second quarter.
Well, he got his second foul at the end of the first quarter, and then his third foul in the middle of the second. Only played 56 seconds there. He was actually going to close. You would have expected to close out the quarter, which means that he would have played 8 more minutes there. He was on pace for around 35 minutes.
Right. And so, yeah, I mean, I think that that's his upside. And I think that the entire point here is that his minutes are very volatile as a result of fouls and blowouts and some, Hoiberg just running weird rotations at times. But we're talking about this guy being $5,500, and that's just taking all of that into account.
That is correct. Welcome, Marshall Williams. Glad to have you with us, brother. We welcome all newcomers to the Awesome O channel. 13 games, we're 5 in. Anything else on this one? Anything else you want to talk about with Levine, or people are asking questions about Justin Holiday, who appears to actually be playing relatively decent, but we all know he's going to come back down to earth. Anyone else here?
Yeah, Trevor Ariza on FanDuel at 4,800, I think, is a really good play. Like, he's fine on DraftKings at 51, but there's a ton of guys in that price range. But at an even cheaper price tag on FanDuel, he should play around 38 minutes here, and obviously a good spot.
Sounds good. Let's skip the Lakers game just for Ring Rim. And no, I'm kidding. He really thinks I hate the Lakers so much, but really I don't care enough about the Lakers. I'm a fan of a good team, Ring Rim, and they didn't need to bring in the best player in the world to get a win. I'm just kidding with you. They're a fun team. Lakers in Cleveland. LeBron makes his much and highly anticipated return to Cleveland in front of a hostile Cavs faithful. Cavs are 2-13 this season. They suck. There's no question about it. And now LeBron comes in to kind of rub it in their face a little bit, Adam. He goes to LA, took his talents to LA, and 2-13. This team's terrible. They're clearly tanking. Kevin Love is out with like injured toes or something, and I don't even know. I don't even remember what Kevin Love's injury is at this point. It is his toe.
Yep.
It is. It's his damn toe. Anyway, Lakers are 9.5-point favorites. 221 total here, but obviously the narrative is strong with LeBron. We can't ignore it, but we also can't ignore his $11,600 price point on DraftKings, the highest priced player on the entire slate. And I don't think we could ignore the fact that this game could easily be over midway through the third quarter. That would not be a big surprise. So I'm very much on the fence with LeBron today.
Yeah, I mean, that's where I'm at as well. There's nothing that I dislike about LeBron. I think it's obviously a good matchup against Cleveland. I think that the fact that Rajon Rondo's out gives him a boost as well. We saw him play, or we've seen him play most of the minutes that Lonzo is not on the floor. So you get a boost in ball handling, you get a boost in basically every stat across the board when LeBron's out there without Ball or Rondo. So even taking the narrative out of it, it's a better spot than normal for LeBron because of Rondo's absence. But again, it's just such a loaded slate, not even only at the top, but in the mid range, to where I have a really hard time paying for the most expensive guy out there, especially when I know he's not going to be, like 1% owned or something like that. I have a hard time paying for the most expensive guy when he's going to be popular here. And, if he goes out and drops 80, then that's fine. It's not like it's completely, out of the realm of possibilities, but that's also the case for a lot of other guys here that are less expensive.
Yeah, exactly. I worry about the blowout for sure. And normally I always say, like, I'm not in the business of predicting blowouts, but on a 13 game slate, I can take some liberties, right? I can, by the way, Alex Len was just ruled out. And Dwayne Dedman has power forward eligibility. So go ahead and do your thing, fellas. Dwayne Dedman, Adam, power forward eligibility on DraftKings, 4,200, 5,000 center on FanDuel.
Yeah, and I mean Spellman and Poitras being out is a huge deal there as well.
Huge. He might play. He might actually jump 30 minutes here. I wouldn't be that surprised.
Yeah, no, me neither.
Okay, we had a couple questions in chat. Number one, any interest in Tristan Thompson? I just threw an answer in chat that I'm probably not, with center being so deep. I don't feel the need to go to Thompson with the blowout risk and just believing that he's coming back down to earth. And then we had another question. Someone wants to know about David Nwaba. So I'll let you give both of them. I've put my takes in chat.
I have no interest in Thompson, just like you said, because of the position. I do have interest in David Nwaba, though. So
wow, look at this.
He's only 3,600 on DraftKings. I'm pulling up his FanDuel price now, but he's cracked the starting lineup over Larry Nance, and he's 3,900 on FanDuel. So he's not a really productive player on a permanent basis, but he is the kind of guy that can thrive in pace-up matchups where he has ball-dominant guys to defend. And both of those are clearly the case here, where he's going to be tasked with defending, anyone from LeBron to Ingram to, whoever. There's plenty of guys on this Lakers team that David Nwaba can be used on. And we've seen Cleveland be so hesitant to use Larry Nance at the 4 this season that them taking him out of the starting lineup, at least to me, and I could definitely be wrong, but the way I'm playing it is that I'm giving Nance back his backup center minutes and a handful of minutes at power forward. I'm giving Kyle Korver some minutes at the 4, but then I'm giving the rest to Nwaba here. And I'm assuming that they're going to put him out there for defensive reasons and that we see him play, north of 30 minutes here, especially if he's playing well. And it's just the kind of game where he can run into, extra rebounds, defensive stats, and can pay off his price tag pretty nicely. So it obviously can go poorly, but he is really cheap. And I do like David Nwaba. I prefer him to Wilson Chandler.
All right. Rick is happy to hear that. I can tell you that much. Because he's all over David Nwaba today in chat. Fair enough. I don't have an issue with him. I'm also not a huge believer. What are your thoughts on Cedi Osman at 4,300?
He's too cheap for his upside. I'm still not really getting to him. I'd rather play Dedman at 4,200. He's still he hasn't been that good this year, and it's not even like he's had a ton of opportunity and he hasn't been good. He's played a lot of empty minutes where he has a low usage rate, down around 16%. He's not really doing a whole lot in terms of rebounding or facilitating either. It's just a nice price for this matchup, but it's not someone that I'm, super excited about.
No, I'll tell you this much. If you're deciding between Osman or Nwaba, just go take the savings with Nwaba, especially given that if this is a blowout, he's probably still going to get some fourth quarter run. He's not exactly an integral part of this team, and he'll probably get, whatever run he was expected to get in a close game, probably close to that in the blowout. With the Lakers, though, Adam, LeBron has been the only guy that has any value recently. Lonzo, I think I ill-advisedly played him a couple of days ago. He shot a crisp 0 for 5 in that blowout. He's just not giving us what we need, even with Rondo out of the lineup. I think Lonzo Ball should probably be like 4,500 with the way he's playing.
Yeah, and even if I project him for 30 minutes here, he's still just not he comes in as a good play, but he's not getting close to my lineups just with all the other options out there. So, certainly he has a ceiling at this price tag, but outside of, if I'm playing a ton of lineups, he's just not someone that's making my short list.
All right, I'm with you. I'm with you. I can't do it. There's just no reason. Too many cheap players to hop aboard the Lonzo train and have him shoot 1 for 8. Portland and Milwaukee. Hope you enjoyed that ring rim. Portland and Milwaukee. Blazers playing on the road here, back-to-back games on the East Coast. Well, this one is Midwest, but they're coming from the Madison Square Garden yesterday. They're 7-point dogs in Milwaukee, 225.5 total. This is kind of one of those games where outside of Nurkic, I know you really like Giannis. I'm not as high on him as you are just because there's so much depth elsewhere. But outside of Giannis, uh, I'm not super high on this. Or not, I'm sorry, outside of Yusuf Nurkic, who on DraftKings is priced somehow at 6,700 still. This isn't a game that I have a ton of interest in.
No, and neither do I. And I said that Giannis is my highest projected guy, but it's not by a super wide margin. And where he's more expensive than Durant, I'm still getting to Durant. So, Giannis, I think it's a perfectly fine spot. I don't think I'm going to get all the way up to him. Middleton's price tag is appealing, but still having trouble prioritizing him. Same goes for Eric Bledsoe. I'm with you on Nurkic, a really deep center position, but he's just still playing, 30, 32 minutes in nights where he's not in foul trouble and where the game's competitive. He's averaging around 1.3 points per minute. This is not a matchup where I am concerned at all about, him struggling efficiency wise. So I still do really like Nurkic, especially because he's basically always not popular. The issue, of course, is just how deep the position is. I don't fault anyone for not having him as their favorite center.
Yeah, and there are a lot of centers we've yet to even talk about yet uh, that are in really good spots. Dedman, fortunately, has power forward eligibility, but there's no question that Dedman is still in play on FanDuel, even though he's center only. Like with the per minute production he gives you and the potential minutes he can get today, even though he's 5K is not that expensive, even though he's at center, it's not like you can avoid him anywhere. So it's definitely going to be tough. I I
Yeah,
don't go ahead. What were you gonna say?
I was agreeing with you.
Is there anything else you have in this game?
If you're max entering, don't sleep on Pat Connaughton or Ursan Ilyasova here. Like, unless assuming like really good value does not open up between now and lock. If you're trying to go stars and scrubs, you're kind of limited to like Wilson Chandler and David Nwaba being the two probably most popular guys in that low to mid 3K range. And obviously, both of them can fall pretty flat on their face. We've seen Connaughton not get a ton of minutes, but it's not that difficult to see him getting up to like 26 minutes here if they just take Sterling Brown out of the rotation. He's 3,700, and getting him at 1% ownership if you're trying to go stars and scrubs is appealing. Same for Ursan Ilyasova, who should get back up 5 minutes here with Henson out. So again, nothing that you're super confident in, but if you're looking for pivots off of probably a semi-popular Chandler or Nwaba, those guys really don't project much differently in terms of ceiling.
I'll get this in before somebody else points it or someone points it out in chat. Yes, the huge CJ McCollum game did come against Milwaukee this year. The two areas they kind of struggle are against mid-range shooters that can penetrate and get in to those 10 15 range 10 15 footers, and also in the interior around the basket because Brook Lopez isn't really doing much to slow people down, which is why I like Nurkic. But yes, McCollum had a huge game against Milwaukee earlier this year, 40 points, 63 fantasy points. But that's really the only reason you're playing him. And because sure, the matchup lines up nicely, but man, you're going to have a tough time squeezing him into lineups unless you're playing 150 of them.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's a nice matchup. It's a pace up spot. He has plenty of opportunity. There's nothing wrong with McCollum, but I also am not interested in rostering every guy that's ever had a good game against the team they're playing. So
That's good. Yep, exactly.
So you still have to look at it in context of the rest of the slate where there's a ton of really good shooting guards to play, and he kind of just falls behind a lot of them for me.
Right. And some of them are underpriced on both sites. Okay, Minnesota, Denver. Here's a good one. 220 total. This is definitely a pace-up spot for the Nuggets, who on the season are playing at the 5th slowest pace in the league. Meanwhile, Minnesota top 10. So guys like Jokic get a nice pace-up spot. Gary Harris is 5,800 on DraftKings. There's no doubt, though, that You look at Jokic, and he's another guy that I would expect to go overlooked. Right now, we have Jokic projected to have very low ownership, and I think that will be the case, Adam. If you take just his numbers and avoid the kind of roller coaster ride of production that he's been on this year from a fantasy point standpoint, um, he leads the Nuggets in potential assists with over 10 a game, rebound chances with 15 a game, touches with 80 a game, usage at 24.5%. And among all centers in the league, Jokic has a 35.5% assist rate. It's Vooch ranks second at 19.2% among centers. Jokic is at 35.3%. He's just a do-it-all type player, and he's going to benefit from the added possessions here. You mentioned him on the Early Bird podcast this morning, and I'm mentioning him now. There's no question that Jokic has the upside against a very unimposing defenseman or defender in Karl Anthony Towns.
I think he's a much better FanDuel play than DraftKings play. He's 9,300 on FanDuel, 97 on DraftKings. And then also you have less underpriced centers on FanDuel. I mean, you have Nurkic up at like 7,700. Just in general, it's sharper pricing. Towns is more expensive than Jokic on FanDuel, whereas on DraftKings, he's almost $1,000 less. So
and Jokic is $1,900 cheaper than Embiid on FanDuel as well.
Right, exactly. Where DraftKings, I think it's 1,100. So
11, yeah.
Yeah, it's almost impossible for me to get to Jokic on DraftKings, and it has nothing to do with him or the matchup. It's just the way it is. But on FanDuel, I think he makes for a phenomenal play.
Yeah, it's just a spot where he's very capable of going off. I have no doubt here. He thrives in these spots, but definitely agree where you're getting cheaper plays. I mean, what Joel Embiid's under 11K on DraftKings. That changes things, and you got a lot of other cheap centers as you pointed out. But this game, all in all, is there anywhere you're targeting? As we talked about Jokic already, anywhere else you're looking at? Gary Harris, cheap. I'm not sure it stands out that much, but it is an up tempo spot for Denver for sure.
Yeah, nothing else that I'm really prioritizing from the Denver side. It's a perfectly fine matchup, but to me, it just seems like most of these guys are priced pretty correctly.
All right, Minnesota.
Yeah, Karl Anthony Towns on DraftKings. He's 8,800. He hasn't been great in his last couple of games, but we still know how good he is without Jimmy Butler on the floor. There's no reason to think that really changes. So 10K on FanDuel, I'd rather play Jokic, but for 8,800 on DraftKings, he's one of my favorite centers over there. And then Dario Saric, who you had already mentioned, he's 4,600 on FanDuel and only 4,200 on DraftKings. I would put Dedmon ahead of him, but he has closed each of the last 2 games. I think he plays around 28 minutes here. It's tough to really get a gauge on his rate since he's only played 3 games with Minnesota, but he does rank second or third in potential rebound opportunities so far, despite not playing as many minutes as some other guys. So that's something that's been good to see. I think that it wouldn't be surprising to see him, kind of have a breakout game at a cheap price tag.
He's also faced and we know Denver limits opponent rebounds, but he's faced Portland and Memphis, 2 stout defensive teams. Closing out those last 2 games, Saric last game came in with 5.5 minutes left in the third and played the entire rest of the game. So he played 17 minutes to close the game. And then the game before that, he played 14 minutes to close the game. So if you're playing Saric, don't freak out about the 11 minutes he plays in the first half. You know what I mean? He's getting a lot of his run in the end of games.
Yeah, and we saw them doing that like earlier. What makes me kind of confident that it continues, aside from the fact that he's just much better at basketball than Taj Gibson, is that early in the season we saw Gibson playing like 26 minutes and giving 20 minutes to Anthony Tolliver. So it kind of just seemed like they were trying to get Gibson into this role where he doesn't have to play a million minutes a night. Tolliver wasn't quite good enough to make that last, but Saric obviously is the best out of that group.
Yeah, and Thibodeau the fact that Thibodeau's closing with Saric in close games says all you need to know about the confidence he has in him. And they just traded away Butler for him. So I think Saric is a good play. But you pointed out, and I was going to mention this if you didn't, the fact that Dedmon is now playing without Alex Len takes all of those low-end power forwards and makes them that much less appealing. It doesn't mean they're not still decent plays. It just means that Dedmon is that much better of a play given his upside here in a spot where half of the front court is down for Atlanta. All right, Houston and Detroit. I don't know if By the way, Houston 9-point favorites, 214.5 total. I'm gonna let you run with this because believe it or not, I don't think I have anybody from this game like on the in as a primary play for me right now.
Neither do I. I wouldn't talk anyone off of like Chris Paul or Capella or Drummond, but they're just not guys I'm prioritizing. There's just way too many guys around them that I would rather play.
Yeah, Aaron Baines remains in the starting lineup today for what that's worth. Nothing. Uh, yeah, I mean, I don't want to skip it too quickly, but I don't think there's anything that stands out here.
It's just a bunch of, I think, correctly priced guys. Paul and Harden obviously eat into each other when they're both healthy. I think that they're both pretty correctly priced. You know, Harden has some upside, but he doesn't have upside like LeBron does, or like Giannis does, or like Davis does, as long as Chris Paul's out there, you know, splitting minutes with him, because it takes the ball out of his hands enough to where it's pretty difficult for him to give you that kind of a ceiling. Chris Paul is in the same price range as like a Drew Holiday, who just projects as a much, much better play here, to the point where I'm not interested in Paul. Capella is probably my favorite guy out of that group, but then you run into the same issue at center where he's just so much more expensive than, you know, guys like Carter or even DeAndre Jordan. He's more
Right.
expensive than, so I just can't prioritize anyone here. And from the other side, from Detroit, it's always basically Drummond and Blake, and center's just too deep for me to really love Drummond here. Blake is
Right.
expensive at a position that I want to pay down at.
All right. This next game we do have, or at least I have quite a bit of interest in. Dallas hosting Brooklyn. Dallas is third in offensive rating at home this year, 27th on the road. Pretty interesting stat there. They're 5.5-point favorites, 214.5 total. I'll just be quick. DeAndre Jordan, deep center position, but like to see bounce back in a unsuspected matchup against Memphis last game, 17 and 20. His price is down. There's a great spot for opposing bigs, particularly DeAndre Jordan against Brooklyn. Luka Doncic is another guy that I think is very much in play. 6,800 point guard on DraftKings, on FanDuel, 76 shooting guard eligible. And then on the other side, I'm going quick here because I want to get everything in. I'm going to turn it over to you. D'Angelo Russell uh, has played 30 plus minutes in 3 straight starts. 31% usage since Levert's out. 38% assists, 1.35 fantasy points per minute, and it seems like Atkinson is finally giving him the run that he deserves. So all of those numbers for Russell add up and have me pretty impressed with the guy. All of his volume numbers are high, potential assists, you name it. That's really where I'm looking at in this game. What are you doing with Brooklyn and Dallas?
Echoing everything you said, you know, Russell, not only is he more productive without Levert out there, but he gets more playing time, which is obviously nice. It's hard for me to prioritize him on this particular slate, but I don't think there's any questioning the ceiling that he has. Luka is way too cheap, especially on DraftKings at 6,800. DeAndre Jordan is too cheap as well on both sites. I think that Jordan is certainly someone I would look to, you know, in cash games as a priority, because it's just such a good spot for him here. You expect him to play around 36 minutes. Brooklyn ranks in the bottom 10 in rebounds per game and offensive rebounds allowed per game, despite being one of the slower teams in the league. So that's a stat that doesn't factor in pace, and they're still giving up that many rebounds. You're talking about a guy in Jordan who isn't going to be deterred by the fact that Allen is, you know, competent defensively, because most of Jordan's game comes from just grabbing rebounds and dunking it. So it doesn't really matter. So I think it's a really good spot for Jordan. And then, yeah, Luka just way too cheap. Expect him to play around 36 minutes here. If Dennis Smith's out, that's even more, you know, ball handling responsibility that you would expect for Luka. But even if Smith's in, I think it's just, you know, a great matchup for Doncic.
And then really quick here, Dorian Finney-Smith with Wesley Matthews out. Thoughts? He's played 34 plus minutes in back-to-back games.
He should play a lot of minutes. It's a slower Brooklyn team. Like I'd rather play Nawaba. I'd rather play Chandler in games that should have more possessions,
All right, fair
because
enough.
they're
Next,
basically the same guy.
yeah, they really are. Memphis and yeah, low usage guys that'll get some minutes and hopefully some peripherals. Memphis and San Antonio. Uh, Here you go, man. 3.5 or 3-point spread. Spurs are favored here. Oh, here we go. John Collins expected to play 25 minutes for anyone that was wondering. Uh, Spurs 3.5 favorites. I keep messing that up. We have a game with a sub 200 total, Adam. A sub 200 total in 2018, 199.5. You loading up on this one, I bet.
Yeah, love it. No one else will be here. No, I don't care about this game. Like Aldridge is cheap, Gay is cheap,
Manny
DeRozan.
special.
Yeah, I'm not playing these guys.
All right, our good friend Manny Laura, we call him a Manny special whenever he would literally forget that games were even on a slate. And does it not feel like it was always a Memphis Utah or Memphis San Antonio game
Yep.
that fit the bill
Yep.
all the time? So it's 13 games. You might have a sneaky play here, but I don't know if sneaky's even necessary in this case. Like you're getting super low uh possessions on both sides of this game. Memphis and San Antonio both playing at crawling paces. I'm just not here, and I
Yeah.
don't think you should be.
The only guy from this game I've come remotely close to on
Rudy
DraftKings
Gay.
is Rudy Gay.
Yep, that's it. And he's definitely not a priority. So all right. Well, then, since you didn't have anything there, and I kicked off the Dallas Brooklyn game, let's go to Utah, San Antonio, or Sacramento, because I think there are some good plays here. Utah, 9.5 point favorites at home, 222.5 total. I'll be honest, though, Adam, I'm not buying this 9.5 point spread. Uh, I think this game stays competitive, and I might go back to the well with some De'Aaron Fox, being that everyone probably hates the guy.
Yeah, I can't get the Fox in like single entry stuff, but he's certainly someone that I would like to go back to in large field or anywhere that I'm playing a bunch of lineups. Just because the price tag's still too cheap. He's still playing huge minutes in competitive games. He still has around a 25% usage rate and is getting a ton of assists. There's
And
no
he shot
reason.
1 for 10 last game. He still had 13
Right.
assists.
Yeah, exactly. He had a bad shooting game. He still picked up 13 assists. He still played 35 minutes. He's
Yep,
still
yep.
underpriced. And Utah just has not been that good defensively. It's a huge pace down spot, but they just haven't been great defensively. And he's just the perfect tournament play, I think, in larger field stuff. So, yeah, no issue there. Same goes for Buddy Hield. Played around 35 minutes last game. He's still going to get up a bunch of shots. And then Cauley Stein at 5,700 on DraftKings is also underpriced. Certainly not a priority, but these are guys that I think working them into lineups where you're playing 150, you don't have to have a ton of them to be overweight, and they certainly give you tournament winning upside.
I'm with you. That's pretty much where I stand. I know people are pissed at De'Aaron Fox, but this happens. And I know, of course, Trae Young had a big game in a much tougher matchup. That happens. It's going to happen, right? But still, Fox is doing a lot. He still has 25% usage. He's still getting a ton of assist opportunities. He shot 1 for 10. It was a bad game, and it happens. But I still see him being too cheap. And plus, Adam, it's not, by the way, Utah is playing at a middle of the road pace this year, not at the bottom. And they're also, well, a little less than middle of the road. And they're also not like defensively, they have definitely not been the same defensively stout backcourt that we've seen in the past. So I think that factors into it as well.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with you completely.
I see so much on Willie Cauley Stein, people talking about him in chat, saying he's too cheap. He is cheap. This is matchup related for sure. It is a tough spot, but I want to do our listeners and our viewers right. And he did, post big numbers against Utah this season. I'm sure people will reference that. Quick take on him, and then we'll close it out and turn it over to the live before lock crew.
He's fine. I mean, it's just tough to prioritize. He's a really good pivot, I think, off if you're looking at ownership. He's a really good pivot away from Wendell Carter, because there's certainly a chance that you get like 8 more minutes from Cauley Stein than you do from Wendell Carter, and he's almost certainly going to be at lower ownership. So from that aspect, I think that he's a good play. It's in terms of who am I prioritizing? I still just have him behind Carter,
Right.
and behind.
One more game to go here. Chris coming up next with Eddie, live before lock show. Take you up till 7 p.m. Eastern time. And hey, before you guys head out, hit that thumbs up button for us, and that'll be our Thanksgiving treat. Yeah. Anyway, one more game. Let's get it done and close this out. Head into the holiday on a high note. Golden State, OKC. KD facing his former team, Westbrook facing the guy that he hates most in the world, even though he says he doesn't. KD has not been great lately. I understand that, but we would be foolish to overlook the 35% usage, 1.5 fantasy points per minute in the time that he's played without Stephen Curry and Draymond Green on the court. Sorry, 37% usage, 35% assist rate.
Right, exactly. And the price tag is as low as it is because he's just played absolutely awful lately. And it's just not something that I really care about, because going forward, you expect Kevin Durant to still be, good at basketball, and he's still getting all the opportunity in the world with these guys out. It's a difficult matchup for sure, but I think the price tag, just the fact that Durant is one of the cheaper superstars on the slate in this spot, it's really appealing to me, and he's the guy that I'm probably most likely to get in my lineups.
Me too. I don't think Jonas Jerebko's crazy, but again, Dwayne Dedman opens up a lot. Jerebko has double-digit rebounds in each of the last 3 games he's started for Draymond Green. So it's not like he's been terrible. He's not shooting a lot at him, but his floor's actually been pretty solid. So I'm not if you're playing a lot of lineups, Jerebko's a guy that that is going to be in my player pool. I think that's the simplest way to put it. Outside of that, I don't think I have anything else from Golden State.
If we get news that Iguodala is going back to the bench, I think Quinn Cook's a really good play with Draymond out.
Yeah, fair enough. He's going to have a lot more ball handling responsibilities with no Draymond, who takes over as a de facto point guard alongside Kevin Durant because no one else handles the ball. What do you make of OKC? Are you on Westbrook today?
I don't have a problem with him. I'd rather play Durant, and I highly doubt that I'm paying up for 2 guys because of how deep the mid range is on this slate. So I have him, I have him behind Durant, but I don't have a problem with him at all. I think that he offers pretty close to the same ceiling as anyone on the slate, and he's one of the cheaper guys as well. So nothing that I dislike there.
Anything else for OKC?
No, no,
Nothing, huh?
no, because I mean, Paul George is still priced to where, or still not all the way to where he was, but he's still priced up as a result of his games without Westbrook. Schroeder is basically worthless without Westbrook. Adams is in a price range where I'm just not planning on going at center, and if I did, it would be for like DeAndre Jordan. Terrence Ferguson's back. Abrinas, last I saw, is still questionable, but Ferguson back takes away Diallo minutes. If you were looking to punt there, it takes minutes away from TLC. So there's just not really anything here. Plus, Golden State does play at a slower pace without Curry as well.
All right. And I guess we'll keep our eyes on some of the injury news in OKC, but it likely won't make a huge difference. Last one, and then we're out of here. Make it quick. Steven Adams, any interest?
No, not at his price. I prefer like DeAndre Jordan in that range. I would even prefer on DraftKings Clint Capella in that range. It's just a price range I don't really see getting to at center for the most part.
That'll do it. Hey, we wish you guys the best of luck tonight. Have a happy and great Thanksgiving. Stuff your stomachs. We'll catch you back here on Friday's 14-game slate. Have a great holiday. Thanks as always for tuning into the Deeper Dive and showing us some love. We'll see you back here on Friday. Stick around for Chris and Eddie live before lock coming up next, taking you up to 7 p.m. Eastern.